Hello and welcome back to Frogboy X1 Gaming. I'm Andrew and I want to talk about something that has kind of been on my mind a little bit, and I I wanted to talk about this since I've upgraded to this AMD card. I want to talk about something FSR versus DLSS, and which one I think is better. And to be completely honest, this answer that I'm going to give you is going to probably surprise you. It's probably going to be like, what are you talking about? And this channel's kind of designed to make you question everything. If you came here, you might actually start questioning things. Okay, so this stems from my Nvidia experience, and I'm gonna give you like a little brief synopsis of of the experience that I have with that. So when I got the 3060 Ti, I was able to, I was like, oh yeah, DLSS. And I was clicking it on every single thing I could turn it on. And at first it was fine. It was like, whoa, man, this is pretty cool. I can get, good frame rates on the 3060 Ti, and everything was going good. It was going good. But if you've been at this channel for a while, you know that I'm not really that big. Like I don't put a whole lot of emphasis on the magic of things like PlayStation 5 and their checkerbirds. I don't really care for checkerbirds. I didn't really care for the fuzzy look that it made, in the vegetation. DLSS and FSR, depending on which level you use, brings that checkerbird fuzzy look to vegetation. The only way I've been able to get rid of that is to start playing my 4K games on my 1440p monitor, and it kind of goes away depending on what one you're using. But see, here's the thing: if you set your resolution to 1440p, you shouldn't need DLSS to do 1440p, right? Like in theory, you should be using DLSS for 4K applications, or using it on a 4K monitor or a 4K screen. That's what DLSS and FSR are invented for, so that you can upscale to a 4K screen, because that takes a lot of processing power. It doesn't take as much processing power to hit 1440p or 1080p. So you should, in theory, with every single card on the market, from the 30 series, well even the 20 series and the 56, and the 50 series from Nvidia, you should probably be able to do 1080p and 1440p relatively easy. The only things that you should be running into is maybe like higher settings, due to VRAM allotment. So when I found myself in situations where I would have to, not want to, have to use DLSS just to get playable frame rates on some things, I was like, wow, this is weird. So when I had the 3060 Ti, I upgraded for Plague Tale Requiem. I mean, you can go back and watch the content, the videos. That was when I upgraded, was for Plague Tale Requiem, pretty much for Plague Tale Requiem, because I was like, man, this game's calling for a 3070 to get 30 frames a second at 1440p, and I remember that, and I was like, what? So I was like, man, maybe I'll get 1440p 60 frames a second. And I did. I did. I could get 1440p 60 frames a second with ease, with turning everything up. But then if I wanted to turn on ray tracing or something, then boom, it would just tank the frame rate, and then I'd have to turn on DLSS just to make it playable at 1440p. At 1440p. We're not even talking about 4K. We're talking about 1440p. So so that's kind of about the time, like that my disdain for DLSS was starting to form. And a lot of people see DLSS as this like, yeah, man, this makes this better than everything. And I'm looking at the experience, and I'm like, guys, don't you guys realize we just paid 700, almost $800 for this graphics card, man, and we're having to use magic just to play it. And this card is supposed to be a 4K card. The only thing that saved the 3080 image in my mind was the fact that there are games that do not utilize DLSS that would run perfectly okay as long as they were from the Xbox One generation or below. They usually ran okay. Like I could get a decent frame rate and it was a playable experience, and that's pretty much mainly what it's always been about. But to use DLSS to to get more frame rate or FSR. I mean, this FSR is not innocent either because they are marketing and selling these cards as 4K cards. I don't give credit to fake technology to get me to what I'm supposedly buying. And I don't. I'm not going to do it with PlayStation. I'm not going to do it with Xbox. I'm not going to do it with freaking Nvidia, and I'm not going to do it with AMD. I bought this card because it is a 4K card. That's what they're marketed as. If you look at the little boxes under the things, it says 1080p, 1440p, 4K. They are marketed as 4K cards. So when you have to use FSR or DLSS to get 4K, I don't I feel like we're being cheated. I feel like we got cheated with that. That's my honest opinion on that. Now, when it comes to which one is better, I think they both do exactly what they're supposed to do. They make your image look better on a 4K TV and give you better performance. That's what they do. Whether one looks native 4K, all right, here's the thing. When you put something on the screen and it's native 4K, and you get like the temporal anti-light and like the little stair step pattern, because of how polygons and stuff are shaped. Like you get the little jaggies, the little jaggy edges, with any resolution, even if it's native or not, as long as the best thing that the DLSS does is it smooths those edges off a lot nicer. It does. Does it look better at 4K? Like those lines do look better. Yes, they do. There's no arguing about that. FSR, as long as it's a straight surface or some kind of that looks pretty good too. But you do still get the fuzzy on the vegetation, and you get it with DLSS too. Don't let anybody kid you. You get it with DLSS too. If you look back far away and you can still find fuzzy with DLSS enabled on certain games. Like you can. Like it's there. People just don't they overlook it. And that's fine. You can overlook whatever you want. It's your money. You bought the card. You can overlook it. But to say something is outright trash just because it doesn't have the same visual representation as the other one, that's untrue. Both of them give you back a frame rate. They both work as intended. If you need FSR to play at 4K at 60 or above and it works, it's doing its job. If Nvidia's does it and does it a little bit better, that's fine. It's doing its job. That's the job of FSR and DLSS, is to get you over 60 frames a second or to give you as many frames as possible over 60 frames a second. Now let me tell you my experience with DLSS. Now DLSS is fine, but the frame rate, it's an inconsistent frame rate. Like I found more variance. Like I've been saying since I got these cards, I found more variance in that 3080 card with DLSS enabled than I do with this new card without anything on it. And when I turn on FSR in certain games, it actually costs performance sometimes. If it's already over 60 frames a second and it's already pushing, like sometimes it'll cost me a little bit of performance. To be completely honest with you, I've noticed it actually costing some performance. So that's the thing, man. You can say DLSS is better all you want because yes, it does actually make the image look better than what FSR does. And that's fine. Like FSR is designed to give you more frame rate and still make the image look, presentable on a 4K screen. Like they are doing their job. But I'll tell you what, like, yeah, you get a higher frame rate with DLSS sometimes, but it's not a consistent one. It jumps and it was literally about a 40 FPS jump. And if you have an Nvidia card, look at it yourself. I mean, I would think that our experiences would be the same. You'll notice when you got DLSS that your frame rate at least in mine, I'm pretty sure it's yours too. And if you know, I mean, like the frame rate will fluctuate pretty hard depending on what you're doing and everything. Like I feel like there's more variance in the overall frame rate. I don't feel like the frame rate stays locked as much as it would. Like I can go through, like trust me, I can go through and I can cherry pick any part of a game that shows a higher frame rate. Like I can do that. I can do that on both games, on both cards. I can go through and cherry pick whatever you want me to, and I could show you that, like, oh yeah, man, right now DLSS is holding a high spot because I would get those high spots in freaking all kinds of games, like Spider-Man, for instance. Let's talk about Spider-Man Remastered. When you're swinging up toward the top of the buildings, you could get the frame rates to go up over 100 frames a second. If you're in the middle area, you're about 60 to 80 frames a second. If you're on the ground, you're anywhere from 45 to 70 frames per second. And that's how my experience with Spider-Man is, and that's pretty consistent with what I've seen from other people. And I also have seen people with way higher frame rates, but they're always in one of those areas when they're doing their benchmarks. That's why I don't really put a whole lot of emphasis on these benchmarks, especially when they're showing like DLSS or anything like that. Like if they're showing off DLSS, I just haven't never had a consistent straight experience with frame rate like I'm getting now with the AMD. Like I never had that with the Nvidia card. That frame rate, like no matter, like it would sometimes it would be low, like low 60s, sometimes it would be up in the hundreds, and then the frame rate would just fluctuate so much that I was like, wow. I mean, I think with no, because that one doesn't even have DLSS. With I actually got really good frame rate on Horizon Zero Dawn. I was getting almost up to 120 at 1440p with that card. So I mean, I was happy with that card in most of the time. I just kind of feel like the frame rate. I'm not even saying this just to be weird, but like I could like distinctly remember like certain games I would have better frame rate, better, more stable frame rate. Oh, Gotham Knights. If I had DLSS enabled, my frame rate would all over the place. If I turned it off, it was a straight shot like that. It was a lot more stable. So there was something going on with DLSS too. I feel like DLSS is cool, but I feel like you need I don't know. I've never tried any of the more powerful cards, so maybe they do run it a little bit better or whatever. But at least with my 3080 and my 3060, that DLSS was kind of all over the place. I mean, and the only one that really looks good is quality. So you have to run it in quality. If you start going into balanced and then you get to performance and ultra performance, it starts to fall apart pretty quickly. It starts to fall apart pretty quickly. And I mean like don't I mean like I would say FSR looks like balanced DLSS. I would say if you were to put them side by side, I think FSR 2.1 looks almost really similar to what DLSS perform or balance looks like. And then it starts to kind of fall apart as you go through there. So that's kind of my overall opinion on it. If you're buying a graphics card to have to depend on Magic, man, like I get it, man. Like I get it, the marketing and the hype surrounding these technologies for Nvidia, they're pretty strong. But I mean, nobody hypes FSR, so you always just think FSR is trash, and then when you start playing and you don't need FSR, you're like, okay, well, I mean, that game is way playable on a 7900 XT. I don't even need FSR, so okay, I'm gonna crank it up to 4K. Well, let's try 6K. Oh my gosh, it works. You know what I mean? Like you can rely on Magic all you want, but I personally am am falling more in love with this AMD card because I'm not having to rely on that Magic to get me over the top or to get me to a point where I'm like, wow. And I've went through every game, almost every game that I have, and I've played around with a lot of them. Well, almost all okay. So every game that gave me problems on the 3080, I've played all of those, and those experiences are pretty freaking stable. They're pretty stable, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. So that's the kind of thing that I'm seeing with AMD is I feel like my overall experience is more stable, and I don't need magic, and I'm happy about that. Like I'm happy about that. I have been testing all of these games without having to use that. Now I did use it on a Need for Speed Unbound when I was running at in 6K. I did have that turned on, and it looked fine because it was I mean you're getting down sampled, so that will make the FSR look a little better and maybe give you back some of your frames. But for the most part, that's what I feel about it. Like I feel like both of these technologies are doing what they're designed to do, but I don't really think either one of them's like a clear winner because I can't really say one's better because even though DLSS made the image quality look better, the overall performance felt a lot more um just all over the place. Not all over the place, but it wasn't as consistent as you would think. And then with FSR, I don't get as great of a quality image, but it kind of feels like the FSR is holding the frame rate a little bit more stable than what DLSS was. But overall, I think they're both fine technologies, but I don't think you should buy a new graphics card. I honestly don't think you should have to go buy a new graphics card just to use its magic to play your games. That to me seems silly. That seems silly, man. I'm sorry, but that seems silly to me. So if you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.